there was all this money out there and people wanted to invest because it was so sexy.
Woo!
And then we hit 2023, right? Actually, we hit 2022, I would say. And now we're in this sort of position. Brent, what do you see as the catalyst for all of the disaster that we're seeing out there right now? All these big bankruptcies and what is the catalyst for that?
Well, you got to go back and say what kind of was the catalyst for the growth. I mean, you mentioned all the free money that was out there, but from a customer experience standpoint, you take a look at it. Buying was never easier than it was when the collision of social selling and mobile payments happened, right? So buying became very easy for the customer. Then you take a look at advertising was still relatively inexpensive, particularly in social channels. You could really just go straight to the middle of the funnel and buy interest, for instance, and you're already halfway down. You don't have to worry about awareness or consideration or any of those other things. And then the third thing, like I said, I think everybody was just kind of hungry for that disruptive story. And we started as consumers, we started to look for it. So if you kind of take each of those in isolation and try and break them down, one, the brands, any brand really right now more than ever, I think full funnel marketing is very, very important because as I've said many times, the consumer attention span right now is fleeting. I mean, people don't have a lot of disposable income. Information continues to grow, up the Moore's Law curve, so to speak. So you have to invest in things like awareness and consideration and then interest and conversion and on down the line. It's also, frankly, more cost effective. It's just more cost effective to flood the top of the funnel and work on your conversion levers down the road and understand that full funnel journey for the customer, The other thing is, if you're not making buying easy, and what I mean is not just the checkout process, but payment options, look at deferred payment plans or what they call the BNPL plans. If you're not looking at those for your consumer right now, you're really missing the boat on that. So I think it's just kind of breaking down each of those things that were true at once and just approaching them with a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah. It's really interesting how I love talking about tactics on this podcast, but at the end of the day, I like talking tactics and then strategy, right? Mm-hmm. But really at the end of the day, it's principles, right? It's principles of how to market. What are the best marketing books out there? Well, I'll tell you, it's not, I mean, sorry, I don't want to pick on Hermosi because I actually think that he's repackaged principles beautifully the way that he's done it. So I'm going to make fun of Gary Vee because I think that he does a lot of things that are just straight tactical, right? And that's fine. That's his audience and they love that. And yet who do I want to listen to? Seth Godin or Gary Vee, when it comes to this, right? Brent, I would love to talk to you about one of the more recent roles that you were in. You were actually in a super D2C darling brand that you were at MVMT. Talk to me about that and sort of what that transition looked like, because you came post-acquisition, right? Post-founder acquisition into there. Walk me through what that was like with these brands, because I understand these brands, right? These are just dudes who just had an idea and started it and happened to get in while Facebook ads were super cheap and figured it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first thing that you have to address is everything, as you and many people who have worked in the space know, everything moves at light speed. Movement is just this year a 10-year-old brand. They were founded in 2013, so they just hit their 10-year anniversary. And in that 10 years, 5 years into it, they got acquired by Movado Group. And as you said, that transition took place. And really what I was brought in and some of my other colleagues were brought in is, let's figure out how to reposition the Movement brand. It could no longer be a founder story because it just wasn't true anymore. But also no longer just rely on disruption because a lot of other brands had gotten into watches, jewelry, and eyewear and a lot of other D2C brands, and they were doing it quite well. So you couldn't just count on being disruptor anymore. So it was a little bit about telling that story. But before we went to the story, we had to go to the who's it for, right? I mean, where's the insights? Where's the positioning again, and who is it against? So we had to really define what Movement was. And frankly, all we really did, like I said, is just take a step back and said, what made it special at one time. And what made it really special was a California minimal design aesthetic. Everybody still had a strong appeal towards the design aesthetic. And then frankly, the innovation. The founders were incredibly innovative and they were incredibly resourceful. And we wanted to preserve that heritage. And so we made sure to bring out in the vein specifically and making sure that we were calling out innovation. So it was about leaning into some of those original core principles, but maybe just defining them a little bit differently than we had in the past. And then finally, it was really the media engine. 2013 media looked way different than 2023 media does. And so we had to learn some new tricks. We had to figure out, okay, we need to understand the full purchase cycle of the consumer, getting that consumer all the way from knowing who movement is to, we had to map that out. We had to reset our expectations on our KPIs. When you buy mostly mid-funnel targeting on social, you can see the returns come really, really fast. You open by saying that happens really fast. When you're buying a lot of awareness level traffic that you need to make sure that you've got the right share of voice in your search, in your branded search, when you got to make sure that your retargeting pool is full and being maximized, that takes a little longer. So you got to look at your KPIs and say, we need to reset our expectation of when we expect the return from that investment to come through, and make sure that those benchmarks are reflective of the current versus the past.
I want to step in actually with an idea here too. Something really interesting when we moved into the sort of post-privacy era, right? Or into the privacy era was Facebook's default attribution window, right? It used to be that 28-day click, 7-day view, right? Which is actually not insane. I know I didn't love it as far as that, but when you think about any customer journey, like we ask at all the brands that we own, we always ask, how long have you known about us for, right? How many people say within a week? Like no one.
Never.
Who buys from a new direct consumer brand unless you're like selling some kind of widget that solves a specific problem in the moment?
Yeah.
But like besides that, how long do you take to buy something? I don't buy something in a day. Never. Brent, this is great to have you on.
Thanks, Jordan. Take care.